Oh man, the NES never seemed to give up on NES Mega Man games recently. Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mega Man here and I'm from the likes of the Muxy Toys. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more the Mega Man Marathon. Now you remember yesterday that recently Piglet has recently finished up with Mega Man 4, released in 1991 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now we're going to be jumping into the 5th game in the series, and that's the forms of Mega Man 5, where today that Mickey Mouse, he's the only one who's going to be tackling for that game. As far as the actual series goes, as far as continuing from this point and onwards until when it gets to the future games, well, things get a little bit more samey besides the forms of some tiny little bit of new features and all that stuff, which I'm sure enough that Mickey Mouse will be about to explain more into that as soon as you're able to tackle for that. So, even though, aside from that though, there's not much else to really say, because we're actually on to the 5th game in the series, and it's still going to be on NES until when it gets to Mega Man 6 will be the finale of the forms of the NES games of Mega Man before we jump into the next generation, which is the forms of the Super Nintendo in the forms of this 16-bit world, and especially noticeable for Mega Man 8 for the next generation, and eventually Mega Man and Base for the Super Nintendo / Game Boy Advance, and especially noticeable for Mega Man 9 and 10, we're going back onto its 8-bit roots. So even though that should be expected at this point, but until in Mega Man 11 will be a new generation of any kind for anything. So yeah, there's not much else I can really say about this for the most part though, so it's just another Mega Man game to be on the NES for a 5th time in a row, but we'll see what happens until the actual playthrough on this point, folks. So, without further ado, let's get into Mega Man 5 for the NES, released in 1992. On to you, Mickey Mouse. Capcom presents. In the year 20XX AD, the vicious army of robots is bounding to take over the world. Behind this destruction is Proto Man? That's a bit weird, intro there. Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, I am Mickey Mouse here, and I'm from the likes of the Muxy Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next installment of the forms of the Mega Man Let's Play Marathon. Now, we're gonna be heading to the 5th game in the series of Mega Man Classic Mega Man Industries. Now, it's the forms of Mega Man 5. This game also came out on the Nintendo Entertainment System, along with, the same lines as of how it does in the first Mega Man, and the forms of Mega Man 2, 3, and 4, and now we're on to the 5th game, but we're still stuck with the NES, so we're still in the 8-bit world, pretty much. So, yeah, basically the whole plot in this game this time around, though, is the fact that Proto Man is behind all this, and as a result, Dr. Light is being kidnapped by the forms of his own creation, by the forms of Proto Man. So, yeah, you remember back in Mega Man 3 that we did manage to face off against with, technically Breakman / Proto Man, because even though that's where we first introduced to the forms of Proto Man at the very end of Mega Man 3, but then in the majority of the actual Mega Man 3, as far as you ever first time playing it, you thought to yourself it might actually be known as Breakman. So, very interesting altogether. So, again, if you ever played any other Mega Man games before at this series at this point, well, it plays exactly like how it does it in the forms of the previous 4 games, but there are some slight alterations, and I think some people may attempt a little bit more, get disappointed by slights for a small degree. but we'll get more into that as soon as we get to the first level in the forms of Mega Man 5. Yeah, Proto Man is also spawning new forms of 8 Robot Masters for his army. Are they really seriously gonna have to gem-packed with the forms of those Robot Masters for our disposal? I mean, I don't know how that usually comes out of nowhere, but even then, no, that's as far as we might as well consider this. So, anyways though. So, the first level we're going to be heading to in Mega Man 5 is the Forms of Charge Man stage. Now, this usually takes place in somewhere in a train, which is very convenient because we technically already saw a train sequence in the forms of Mega Man 4 for only at the beginning and especially at the very end of the game. But this might actually be the first time in the Mega Man series we're actually going to be hop into the train level for once. So, that seems promising altogether. So, once again, Mega Man usually uses the slide, much like how it does it since Mega Man 3 and especially Mega Man 4. And also, similar to the likes of how it does in Mega Man 4, Mega Man once again just managed to use his Charge Shot for his Mega Buster. So, everything else checks out there. So, it's pretty much exactly almost identical to Mega Man 4, but with some slight downgrades until we get to later on. Because even then, well, as far as the comparison to the likes of the future games, and even especially noticeable with the previous installments, but again, we'll find out. Now, as you can see right there, there are going to be some collectibles here and there in Mega Man 5, which, as you can see, we're going to be collecting some letters. So even then, as you can see, there it says Mega Man V, or in this case, Mega Man 5, to be more precise with the number coding for the old school clock. Well, that's how you're able to actually just manage to get yourselves all 8 of those letters, because yes, I say 8 because, well, thankfully though, every single letter appears to be in individual Robot Master levels, because even then though, I really can't guarantee there won't be any letters involved in the forms of the actual, like, I don't know, Proto Man's castle or something like that, because even then, because yes, we have a new friend, Town by the forms of Proto Man this time around, because at first I thought he was going to be in the good side, just like in the forms of how it does it in, you know, the future games until we get to at this point in time, and especially noticeable with Mega Man 4, we're able to actually just manage to take Dr. Cossack's daughter right in front of Mega Man, and Cersei able to actually just manage to apologize for Dr. Cossack, and then Dr. Wily comes in and then decides to try to like stop Mega Man, and it's up to Mega Man to stop him once again for the 4th time in a row. So, I really possibly won't guarantee that we're probably not going to be seeing Dr. Wily for quite some time now. So even though that maybe seems the case. So, of course, Rush Coil makes a return, just like in the forms of Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 4, but except the fact that if you couldn't tell, that since I've already grabbed myself the letter A from the very beginning of the level, actually I'll get to more on that later, because for now, here we go with the first Robot Master in Mega Man 5, we have his Charge Man, which appears to be a trained Robot Master. He can be kind of tricky at times, especially noticeable how the fact that he keeps moving all over the place. In fact, let's just say this right now, my biggest gripe with Mega Man 5 is the actual, I feel like the level design and presentation feels like a step backwards for Mega Man 4 for me. I mean, there are some levels I attempt to enjoy until we get to later on down the game, but everywhere else, I just don't have really solid opinion on them. But I will say though, in addition to that though, is that the Charge Shot Mega Buster is without doubt the best weapon in the entire game for me. Because, well, I do notice that some people rarely seem to use the some of these Robot Master weapons as far as that's been disposable. But I just really think they always attempt to use the Charge Shot the most in Mega Man 5. But even then, I'll see what happens. So from here, much like how it does in any other Mega Man games at this point, every time you destroy every single Robot Masters, then you get yourself some weapons for your disposal. Like as you can see, I've got my Charge Kick, which can only be performed while simply just able to doing a sliding ability, so yeah, everything else checks out there. So yeah, there's nothing else changed around for Mega Man 5, other than they actually bring something a little bit new to the table around here, but we'll get more into that as soon as we actually get to the next stage. In Mega Man 5, we have is the forms of, well, Wave Man stage. Which, as far as you might expect it, oh actually before I get to this however though, there's actually this little nifty route that you can able to take through while simply just using Rush Coil, and my jumping doesn't seem to register for me. But that way, if you manage to go to this little pipes there, then you can get yourself an extra 1-up. So, Again, this game is very generous with extra 1-ups, especially noticeable with the random pickups, just like in the forms of how it does in the previous games in the series. But what I found is kind of odd though is the fact that unlike the ones in Mega Man 3, and especially noticeable in Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 4, I haven't really got that much energy tanks though, which, admittedly though, that energy tank still makes a return than the likes of how it does in the previous games in the series since Mega Man 2, but we'll get to more on that later. So even I know that once again, it allows you to be able to actually regenerate your health at any sort of noticing. So, oh yeah, there's something a little bit interesting for this Wave Man stage, is the fact that not only do we get ourselves these platforming bubbles that we can actually hop into, and you have to watch out for spikes, don't forget, but also this might actually be the first time ever in the forms of the Mega Man series that how the fact that Mega Man can actually do some stage environment mechanics by the forms of we're actually going to be riding on to the specific hovercraft, which is actually quite a convenience though, can't I think about it. But even then though, I suggest you're able to actually keep on using the Mega Buster and just to, you know, designate all these, every single enemies right there. This might be very tricky if you keep on getting hit a lot, especially noticeable how the fact that, well, there's actually this next letter that we need to able to collect. Every time we're trying to actually get into this kind of stuff. I know I really do apologize if my dialogue has gone really sloppy for this point today, because there's not much else to discuss upon Mega Man 5. It's just there. But even though this game first came out in 1992, around the same year as when Aladdin, the Disney film, has been first came out on that specific year. And what else did came out in 1992? Oh yes, the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Sega Mega Drive version, and the Master System and the Game Gear versions of Sonic 2, they actually came out on the exact same year as Mega Man 5 has been released. So, jeez, that's quite a lot of announcements they've actually did bring us into in the forms of 1992. Or in this case, for this matter, the UK version of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System that came out on the exact same year as well. So, that makes it a little bit all over the place when it comes to releasing those kinds of stuff. And quickly grab the E there, because it's pretty easy to miss though if you do not pay attention to that whatsoever. But there's another missable letter that we might as well able to come towards until we get to the next level, which we'll probably not going to talk more on that later. But for now, we actually reached at the very end of the level, strangely. So even then, let's go ahead and deal with this little cannon little machine there. So even then, no, that if you accidentally die at this point, then you have to redo the entire water crafting again. So here we go, on to Wave Man. So let's go ahead and just kill myself. Well, first step of Mega Man 5, and this time around though, it's gonna be on the second Robot Master instead of like the fourth Robot Master, unlike in the forms of Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 4, because I just don't have any of those energy tanks yet. But anyways, Wave Man. His weakness is the forms of the charge kick, which is by simply we need to able to do some sliding action. So, very easy to pull off. First of all, you have to able to actually shoot. First of all, you have to able to press the shoot button, but it turns out you have to do a sliding ability until you're able to actually just to use that. So, yeah, with the you know, the charge. What's that ability called again? Oh yeah, charge kick ability. That might have to be the Wave Man's weakness. So, there we go then. So that concludes the second Robot Master, and let's see what weapon that we've got. We've got the Water Wave. Can be essentially useful in the forms of the next Robot Master we're going to be handle out with, and that's the forms of Starman? No, not Starman from the Super Mario Bros. Power-Up. It's just its own thing with Starman. As the forms of the Robot Master version. So, don't worry, it's nothing like how the likes of the invincibility power-up or anything like that. So, I really do like this level actually, because this might actually be, I don't know about you, maybe the first time in the Mega Man universe, I don't know for sure, but you can actually just manage to take a detour in the outer space. So, and also this level somewhat feels a bit similar to the likes of Dive Man from Mega Man 4 and the forms of Bubble Man stages from Mega Man 2, that once again we have to utilize the gravity momentum here, but this time around though it takes place in outer space instead of water, which makes me appreciate about this kinds of stuff. But however though, the trickiest part about this level though is the forms of, as far as I'm trying to mention about this in Dream right about now, is the enemy behavior, which I will admit though, compared to the likes of how it does in Mega Man 4 and especially Mega Man 3, didn't have as many troubles or whatsoever, well, a couple of exceptions by the forms of those stupid dragonflies in Mega Man 3, and especially noticeable by the forms of Mega Man 2, like I don't have that much, I didn't have that much trouble at all, either. So, actually, before I get to this, however, yeah, I mentioned this before that the Charge Shot makes a return from Mega Man 4, by the forms of the Mega Buster, but one little problem with that is the fact that every time you get hit by enemies, or any kinds for this matter, well, every time you're trying to charge up your Mega Buster, or in this case you're trying to charge up your Charge Shot, what happens is the fact that you lose your ability to able to actually charge up until for a few seconds notice. So even then though, that can get pretty tacked on, or even especially noticeable that it gets a little bit frustrating, especially if you lose your Charge Shot like here. But, I mean, it doesn't happen on Mega Man 4, regrettably, but it's just how it is for the most part though, so, anyways though. So we have this robot thingy right there with 2 legs and such, so that could easily be defeated with the forms of simple just Mega Buster itself, and yeah, that's all it usually becomes. So today was actually forms of oh, what day was it actually? I forgot. Oh yes, today was actually forms of the 9th of August 2018, so we got quite a lot of things to talk about this time around, because you know how the fact that there's not much else I can really explain about Mega Man 5 so far, well, until we get to the latest couple of stages ahead, but oh wow, I almost died here. Yeah, because Starman stage is going to be filled with spikes, just like in the forms of the majority of Mega Man 4 game, but except the fact that, well, it's only just for one stage alone, so even then, that as long as you're able to know what you're doing, they're able to actually just instantly dodge that, so yeah, that makes it a little bit obvious. Alright, so here we go with the 3rd Robot Master in the game, and that's the forms of Starman. So, his weakness is actually forms of the, well, a wave, thingy, whatever attack you want to call it. I know it's been a long while since I actually managed to look up on Mega Man games recently, because it's especially noticeable with the forms of how the fact that, well, you know. Alright, so, he can be very tricky sometimes because he just jumps all over the place, and also at the same time, you know this little, wave, ability that you're much able to actually use for? Well, it can only hit the ground, so you can't able to use it in midair, so you have to stay put in the actual ground. So even then, once you deal with him enough times, then you would able to actually just, well, finish up the stage. And hopefully you might as well get yourselves the Starman's weapon ability, so I wonder what weapon can we get, I wonder. Well, we'll see until the actual screen is about to be shown up. So we've got the Star Crush and the Super Arrow, which I believe this might actually be the only new ability in the forms of Mega Man 5 so far, which I'll probably explain more on that later, because for now, let's move on to the next Robot Master, by the forms of Gravity Man. I think a lot of people seem to really hate this stage so much is because of one single aspect, but we'll see when we actually get to the end, the majority of the stage itself. So, as you can see right there, how the fact of the matter is though, is that as you can see, we actually come towards these particular flashing arrows. Meaning that, if you remember from the likes of how it does it by the forms of, like, let's just say this is before when Sonic Adventure 2 called, well, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle as well, that the fact the level is called Crazy Gadget. Well, this is how the main gimmick about this levels goes. We're actually going to be going on anti-gravity. So even then, if you come towards these little flashing arrows as what is shown on screen, not only does it give you a shifting between ceilings or floors and stuff like that, well, this is before when Mario Kart 8 exists, and even especially noticeable with the forms of, you know, Sonic Adventure 2 and all that stuff with Crazy Gadget level. Well, not only that, your maneuvering, or in this case the movement, especially with the climbing ladder system, will actually decide to able to actually switch over. Whilst in the forms of left or right, it feels a bit same within intact. So even then, well, as far as climbing ladders goes, it might actually feel exactly different. So that maybe seems the case here. So, yeah, I guess I should probably explain about with the forms of how the fact that you remember how the fact that Piglet has forgotten to able to mention about with the forms of the most recent direct has been came out yesterday. Now the forms of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Direct. I'm not gonna say, I'm actually felt very excited with the forms of the actual full game now. Especially noticeable how the fact that, well, there are still some details that's been missing, but I'm sure enough they will able to actually reveal some more stuff until when it gets to October at some time. Just like in the forms of back in the likes of how it does in 2014. Well, at least until we figure this out until in some time. So, if that's the point, then yeah. Let's get into the actual list of the forms of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Direct, as I was really excited about. First of all, we'll save the fighters for later, because for now, we actually bring something new to the table, like the forms of how the fact that, well, some modes and all that stuff. I'm really glad that classic mode is going back into its classic roots again, because even then, yeah, because I'm really looking forward to, especially noticeable, I miss the old days, ever since enjoying the likes of in Super Smash Bros. 64, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Super Smash Bros. Brawl's classic mode, because of the, you know, just, you have to go through stage to stage, and all, that's all there is to know. But when it gets to, like, Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS, and Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, things changed up a little bit, which I wasn't really too fond of, to be honest. Like, I really do like the branching pathways in the forms of which pathways you want to go to in the 3DS version, but I think to me the Wii U version is a little bit too lackluster to me though, because you have to choose, because you have to keep on maneuvering your trophy of your character of your choice, and able to actually select which battle you want to against with. So yeah, I'm really glad that it's been improved. The only thing I'm might as well able to concern it with is the forms of, I was hoping they're actually fixing up the continue system, or even with the stalking, you know, select what, you know, the stalkings, how much lives you want to go for the entirety of classic mode. Like, you can select up to like 1 or 5, like in the forms of Smash Bros. 64 and Smash Bros. Melee, and especially noticeable in Smash Bros. Brawl. But in the forms of Smash Bros. 3DS and Smash Bros. For the Wii U, they pretty much stuck with just only 2 stocks, which I wasn't really too fond of either, because, well, it could give me a lot of frustration, especially noticeable with the higher difficulties, mainly in 9.0 intensity, which I'm really hoping as well. I was assuming they're actually going to be bringing back the difficulty select instead of like the intensity mode system, but I don't know if that's to be the case though. Excuse me. Anyways though, before we get to this however though, here we go on to this next Robot Master, which as you can see on screen, I accidentally just managed to kill myself by the forms of Gravity Man, because I really can't guarantee I can able to do this fight with a little bit of health left. So yeah, because basically all you have to do is basically we need to able to use the Star Crash, and then you should able to deal some of the damage of the forms of Gravity Man. So if you manage to deal that several times, then you would able to be victorious with this particular fight. It kind of reminds me of the forms of the actual, like, boss battle from Sonic Advance 2, but the forms of, let's just say, the Egg Utopia boss in the forms of Sonic Advance 2, where they keep on shifting between those 2 different gravities, like going through the ceiling or the floor. It kind of reminds me of that, but except the fact that you don't continuously running though, unlike in Sonic Advance 2. So that's just how it is, well, before beyond that. So here we go folks, this is the forms of Gyro Man stage. And oh boy, this is by far the hardest Robot Master level in the entirety of Mega Man 5. Because the reason being for that is because, well, we'll get to more details as soon as we're able to actually proceed for this stage alone. So, anyways, let's talk about more on the forms of, you know, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate very quickly for the actual latest news thanks to Direct. The fact of the matter is, though, is the fact that with these stage amounts, well, not to mention they still managed to bring over to ourselves the battlefields, big battlefields, just like in the forms of Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, but also by the forms of the first look at the final destination, which I will admit, though, looks almost feels like futuristic or something like that, which I know it sounds a little bit more brand new to the table, but even then, I really kind of like the look of the forms of the new Final Destination look, in the forms of how it does in the previous ones. Although, sure, many people seem to actually just manage to think into ourselves that, oh, I don't know. But anyways though, yeah, as far as the actual amount of stages they're going to be bringing us to, like the forms of some of these returning ones and some of them are new, which I'm pursuing that it might actually bring us to ourselves over 100 stages. I mean, what's this? Super Smash Bros. The top 100? Like the forms of 100 stages in all in total? Well, unless if you want to able to include, you know, Battlefield, Big Battlefield, and especially Final Destination, that makes it bringing us into ourselves, well, 103 stages, which even then, that is quite a lot of stages in the forms of the Super Smash Bros. History, which even then, I was really looking forward to that. And especially noticeable with the forms of, not to mention that the Omega formation still makes a return ever since in the 3DS entry, and especially noticeable with the Wii U installment as well. They're also going to be bringing us to ourselves the Battlefield formations, which, not only with all these stages all in combined, with all these different forms and all that stuff. Actually, before I get to this, however, though, this is by far the hardest section in the entirety of Gyro Man stage, because not only do we able to deal with falling blocks and all that stuff, and also dodging these particular enemies themselves, we also got this infamous elevator sequence. Because, as you can see, there are abundance of spikes. But again, if you instantly touch those, then you're instantly going to die. So, you have to stay sharp, and you have to be extremely precise with your jumps and all that stuff and what have you. But as long as you're able to get your timing going, then you were able to actually just to survive from that, no problem. So, but even I know for a lot of people, they're always having trouble with that section sometimes. Because, well, these spikes will instantly still kill Mega Man, so... Anyways, though, back to what I was saying, the stages amount in total with the forms of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate they're going to be bringing us to, like, normal stages and, Battlefield stages count, or in this case, Battlefield formation, stages will be counted, and also by the forms of the Omega stages, formation still counts. That brings us up to over 300. Jeez Louise. How many stages we can able to get, though? But anyways, enough about that. Here's Gyro Man, and his weakness is actually forms of the gravity hold. But you're able to actually use that, not massively, but even then, you have to use that at the right moment until when its invincibility frames disappears with the forms of the Gyro Man. Because if you manage to use it too much, then you're probably gonna waste it. So even then, I suggest you use that quite frequently until when his invincibility frame stops. So... there we go ourselves the Gyro Attack and also the Rush Jet. So, I'm considering the Rush Jet in Mega Man 5 might actually functions the same ways of how it does it in Mega Man 4. That, you're no longer gonna have to turn back when you're trying to ride on it, so you're basically gonna have to keep on going forward with the Rush Jet, so it feels exactly the same as how it does it from before. So here we go, folks, on to the next stage in Mega Man 5 we have is Crystal Man stage. So, let's get to it. And I definitely noticed that there might be something is worth mentioning, how the fact of the matter is though. Actually, before I get to that, however, though, you know, one of the stages they actually did recently announce by the forms of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, they're going to be bringing us to ourselves the New Donk City, which is based off from Super Mario Odyssey. Well, it's now been revealed as its own name, but in forms of New Donk City Hall, which even I know because, you know, that's what it represented, but in forms of the actual stage itself from Super Mario Odyssey. So, yeah, and especially beyond that, you can also just listen up to, like, I would say over 800 musics you can able to actually just listen to this time around. Oh yeah, by the way, these crystals in Crystal Man stage can go to hell, because, well, I was having a hard time trying to able to dodge through those, especially to make matters even much more frustrating than ever will be. There's going to be a lot of bottomless pits all over the place, so if you manage to get hit by the crystals and all that stuff, and if you're not able to actually dodge that during time, then chances are you might as well able to fall down to your pit, and then, you know, you might as well able to actually just cope with just losing your life. So you guys have to cope with it. Unless if you're actually using your Star Crash ability, which functions the same ways of how it does in the majority of the shield abilities, like the Leaf Shield, Skull Barrier for Mega Man 4, and, you know, the suggestions, that can actually protect you from certain hazards from above. So that could be very handy, especially noticeable in this stage in particular. So, anyways. So yeah, back to what I was saying, the music selection of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, they're going to be bringing to ourselves into the forms of, let's just say, 800 or 900 plus music selection this time around, because, well, I can definitely tell there's going to be a lot of music this time around, with the addition to, like, 100 plus stages in the actual Super Smash Bros. Ultimate itself. I think this might actually be, without a doubt, the definitive experience, definitive way playing Super Smash Bros. Properly, which I'm really hoping that they might actually bring us to, like, story mode and all that stuff, which I know the actual, green part of the main menu, which I will admit, though, the main menu this time around, though, is actually a little bit more different than the likes of how it does in the forms of in the past few Smash Bros. History, because, no longer does it have to be, like, a separate, detached, oddly shaped, mesmerizing, or mishmash, menu design, unlike the forms of Smash Bros. 3DS and Wii U. We actually get ourselves, like, somewhat a little bit of a dial, look of it, like the forms of if you're trying to select, what the next mode you want to get into, you can just simply I don't know. It almost feels like a dial, locker from the actual, lock savers, so it kind of reminds me of those. Okay, from here, this is pretty easy to miss, especially noticeable if you hug into the wall and then grab this V, or 5 rather, then you are able to actually get yourselves the next part of your Mega Man 5 letters. So, that particular, item that you can get is very easy to miss, because if you don't know what the actual level layout looks like, then you're probably going to be missing out much. So even then, I suggest you hug onto the left side of the wall, and that way you should be able to grab yourselves 5. So that makes it very obvious. So now we've got 2 letters left, which are N and G. So even then, though, that we'll get those and during the likes of the next 2 Robot Masters, but for now, let's go ahead and deal with Crystal Man, which I'm also able to take my death situation here, much like how it does in the other Robot Masters, just because, well, simply put, I can't deal with him with a little bit of health left, and it doesn't help that, well, we've now finally got an energy tag now, so even now I'm also able to say that, so, much like how it does in Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 3, and especially in Mega Man 4, well, if you manage to run out of health, then you can simply just able to regenerate your health again. So, very useful item if you're having some trouble with some of these levels, especially with Crystal Man stage, then you can simply just able to use that. But I might as well not use that at the moment because, well, I might as well save that and join it at the very end of the game. So, just like how it does in the previous Mega Man series. So there we go, that concludes Crystal Man stage, or in this case Crystal Man in general, and his weakness is the forms of the gyro attack. So that's very obvious there, so yeah, that's all I could really imagine about that. And now we're going to be moving on to Napalm Man stage, which I might as well save Stone Man for last. You got Crystal Eye. That could be something worth helpfulness, especially noticeable when we actually get into this kind of stuff when we get to Napalm Man stage, which it appears to be somewhat takes place in, well, as soon as after this little translation is about to be finished, well, you'll see why. It's almost actually, it feels very similar to the Lion King vibe to it, like the forms of almost the jungle environment or something like that. Oh yeah, we got these little jerk-off enemies right in this game, and that's the forms of the tigers. Now, these tigers aren't that bad, but when we get to the very end, oh boy, you can get a lot of struggle with the forms of the other incarnations of these tiger robots, which even then, you can definitely tell why when we actually get into the actual Proto Man's castle, which even then, I will say for that much. So, yeah, for the most part, I'm really looking forward to that. And in addition to that, though, what's kind of cool, actually, is the fact that you can able to actually listen to your Super Smash Bros. Ultimate music on the go. Like, if you take your Nintendo Switch and able to actually use your headphones, and you can actually listen to your favorite tracks and music and everything, you can able to do that. So even then, it's kind of like the smartphones or something like that. But I don't know if they're going to be bringing us to ourselves the Ultimate music album or anything like that, unlike in the forms of how it does it in Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U and the 3DS entries, but even then, we'll see what happens there. We'll definitely see what happens there during that time period, so, but again, it's a bit too early to able to actually just make it a final development yet, because there's still more things to come. But even then, we've only got about 4 more months left, actually, until when, the actual game is about to be releasing onto itself, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Especially noticeable that I was really hoping they're going to be fixing some of these issues I have with the forms of, well, Super Smash Bros. 3DS, and especially noticeable through Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, most likely, because, well, to be honest, I rarely played Smash Bros. For the Wii U as much as the forms of, well, I haven't really played that game as much compared to the likes of the previous entries in the series, especially with Smash Bros. 3DS, because, well, simply put, because most of the challenges in Smash Bros. For the Wii U are by far the hardest selection of challenges I've ever sought to encounter, because I just cannot for the life of me, I can never seem to get any of those unlockables for that part. Well, I did already unlock all the characters, mind you, but unfortunately my Wii U's data files being corrupted, so even then I'll have to unlock the majority of the characters again, including the DLC characters as well. But even then, we'll think more on that later. But for now, we got an extra 1-up right there, or in this case an extra life, as far as you guys already know. This particular section of this level can get pretty tricky because there are plenty of missiles able to dodge through, especially with this little bigger titan right there. And to make matters even much more difficult than that is that it is so pretty unpredictable to able to actually dodge through the majority of the missiles like this. And especially it doesn't help with this particular enemy at the far right can almost try to kill me, which even then, with the explosion effect in mind, and also you have to watch out for these enemies just like in the forms of Starman stage, but even then, as long as you're able to actually notice the pattern here, then you would able to do it just as that, so... Anyways though, and finally, let's talk about the fighters themselves actually, because even then, there's not much else to discuss, other than I might as well talk more into that as soon as we get to the very end of the game, because even then, before we get to these fighters in the forms of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Direct, here we go with the forms of Napalm Man, which again I might as well take my death situation because again cannot handle him with the forms of a little bit of health left, and aside from that, I've got plenty of extra 1-ups as it is, so even then it's okay to die right there as long as I'm able to actually continuously rank up my extra lives. So yeah, Mega Man 5 is very generous with extra lives at least. The only exception being the energy tank sometimes to me though, so... Anyways though, so for Napalm Man, he's pretty much weak to Crystal Eye weapons, so even then that may seems the case. And yeah, just like in the forms of the Gemini laser from Mega Man 3, you cannot able to actually use the Crystal Eye rapidly, so you have to wait until the actual projectiles actually manage to start finishing the actual well, they managed to make their appearances and all that stuff, so... Anyways, that concludes Napalm Man. And now we're going to be moving on to the last Robot Master before taking on with the forms of Proto Man. And first of all, we got ourselves the Napalm Bomb, which we'll get into more details onto that as soon as we get to Stone Man, the final Robot Master in Mega Man 5. I've already explained much of the Robot Masters themselves actually at the very beginning of the actual Let's Play itself, but even then, until we get to Mega Man 6, which, you know, Twilight Sparkle, we need to get into, Mega Man 6, then, you know, she'll probably gonna be mentioned about that, so... Anyways, though, we're moving on now into the forms of Stone Man stage, and Stone Man may actually be one of the easiest Robot Masters in the forms of Mega Man 5 itself, actually. But even then, we'll get to more on that later, as soon as we get into the actual stage itself, so... Anyways, though... Oh yeah, ignore the one on the right though, because that's a bottomless pit right there, so you probably suggest you might as well avoid that at all times, so... Anyways though, let's get into the actual, the most important aspect of Super Smash Bros., and that's the forms of the fighters themselves. So, not only does it bring us into the forms of how the fact that we've only got two new set of playable characters into a dispersal, but not only that, actually before we get to this however though, if you manage to grab every single letter part spells Mega Man 5, you get yourselves the special reward, but in forms of Beat the Bird. Now Beat the Bird is actually very useful to use, especially noticeable that as you can see, he pretty much designated every single enemy, including boss fights as well, which we'll get to more on that until we get to the very end of the game, like you can definitely know what I'm talking about here. So, yeah, it can actually directly, you know, Beat the Bird can actually directly home in onto any incoming enemy attacks and stuff like that, which I think is actually very useful, but he'll eventually go and disappears during the next screen, so... But again, in order to actually get Beat the Bird though, it's the fact that you need to collect Mega Man 5 letters, so... But again, they tend to appear in, you know, in every single Robot Master levels pretty much though, so that maybe seems the case around here, so... Anyways though. So yeah, with that being in mind, another extra 1-up right there. So anyways though, not only does it give ourselves not only 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 brand new playable characters has been recently announced on the forms of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So we'll start from the beginning, shall we? First of all, they did recently announce there's going to be not only Simon Belmont from Castlevania series to make its playable debut, but also if you remember playing through Castlevania Rondo of Blood before on the TurboGrafx 16, then you probably recognize now the fact that Richter Belmont will also be a playable debut, just like in the forms of Rondo of Blood from, you know, TurboGrafx 16, which is very awesome. But the thing is with Richter Belmont, he plays exactly like Simon Belmont, like he shares the exact same movesets, which usually might actually calls that an Echo Fighter, which kind of like the ones in the forms of Daisy and also Dark Pit, and especially noticeable with Lucina. But even then, really awesome to look at though. And in addition to those Echo Fighters, we also got ourselves the forms of another 2 set of Echo Fighters that we actually got, like the forms of Kuron from, you know, Fire Emblem universe. I mean, how much characters that we got now? Like the forms of now we got 7 of those Fire Emblem characters now, which is insane. And also we've got ourselves Dark Samus from the Metroid series, which even then, we haven't seen Dark Samus ever since during the likes at the very end of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and that spoiler alert, because if you those who haven't played Mega Man, oh no, I keep on thinking about that, if you guys who haven't played Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, that's, yes, Dark Samus makes its debut again, but we haven't seen Dark Samus for quite a long time since, well, you know, in that game, so anyways, if you want to get back onto the platforming business, as you can see right there, then use your Rush Jets and then you can able to actually just get onto that kind of stuff. Now, before we get into the final fighter in the game that has been recently announced so far, unlike the new forms of how it does in Mega Man 3, and especially noticeable for Mega Man 4, Rush Marine does not make a return this time around, which admittedly, because of how the fact that this game was pretty lacking with water physics sometimes, so even then note that because, well, water was there, but only existence on the forms with the actual, the Rush crafting, or the water crafting section in the forms of the Wave Man stage. So, that makes it very obvious at this point, so yeah. And finally, before we finish off this video, especially noticeable when we get to the actual Stoneman Robot Master itself, we've now finally got a new Donkey Kong character into the lineup of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate game. And first of all, it's going to be Dixie Kong, but it turns out for long-time fans, especially noticeable for the Donkey Kong Country universe, we have finally made King K. Rool finally makes a return after 10 years, technically, because, you know, ever since in Mario Super Sluggers, that in the forms of that game, King K. Rool makes his playable debut in Mario Super Sluggers, which is essentially a Mario baseball game on the Nintendo Wii. So yeah, it's been a long decade, King K. Rool, since last time I saw you. Well, technically, he made his cameo appearances in the forms of the Super Smash Bros. Trophies and all that stuff, which I'm probably not going to count those. But for the majority of the actual, his history, then, you know, it's been a long time. Yeah, it's kind of like how it does in new forms of how it does it, where Toadette hasn't been that much in new forms of the end of 2010s and the beginning of 2010s, pretty much for that era, until Mario Kart 8 recently announced back in 2013 in E3. That means that Toadette finally makes her debut after, well, I would say 6 years or something like that. So now we got ourselves the Power Stone, which even then I'll also get into more on that later. So once we deal with all 8 Robot Masters, we finally get to tackle through Proto Man's castle. So I'm gonna have to end things off here. So join me next time on Let's Play Mega Man 5. We're gonna be heading to Proto Man's castle levels. So see you guys next time. Later, fellas.